goal of our mini-documentary was to answer questions about the hidden curriculum found in schools and its connection to the socio-economic status of its students. In our own words, we define hidden curriculum as what students learn about values and social norms through their experiences in school and the classroom. The hidden curriculum is not intentionally transmitted and is not considered a part of the formal curriculum developed by teachers and higher educators. Many of our questions were prompted by reading the article Social Class and the Hidden Curriculum of Work by John Onion that we read in class. In this article, anyone addresses experiences in three types of schools. The first school was working class school, in which parents' occupations consisted of blue-collar jobs. In this classroom, schoolwork consists of following the steps of a procedure. The right or wrong answer is not as important as following the right step to reach that answer. The middle class school that was observed has parents with occupations called the blue-collar rich, or well-paid workers. In the classrooms at the school, students must follow directions in order to get the right answers. Directions sometimes called our figuring choice and decision-making. In the affiliate and professional schools, the parents' occupations were professional, in the income level of upper middle class. The students of this school worked on creative activities independently and were continually asked to express and apply ideas and concepts. The necessary process of completing schoolwork and succeeding academically looked different to each school, as the hidden curriculum was preparing them for the workforce they were assumed to enter.
In Steele's article, Stereotyping and Its Threats Are Real, he discusses the relevance and severity of stereotypes that are alive in society today. He says, first, stereotype threat occurs when one recognizes that a negative stereotype about a group to which one belongs is applicable to oneself in a particular situation. In the context of the hidden curriculum, this occurs at each socioeconomic status. In the case of the children in the working class school, it is assumed that they will have jobs that are similar to their parents, and therefore not much is expected of them. In this case, they start to believe the stereotypes that society gives them. For some, this may not be offensive, but for kids who aspire to succeed, this may hold them back in more ways than one.
Interview 1. Background on person. Kim Hildo has been an elementary school teacher for 26 years. She has worked in a few types of school, both public and private. The school she has spent the most time in, though, has been a low-income school in Winfield, Kansas. The free and reduced lunch rate is around 89%, and a significant number of the students live in poverty, move around a lot, or are in foster care. Why this person was chosen to be interviewed? We chose her because of her experience in low-income school and felt that her insight would be relevant to the hidden curriculum. It is assumed that most teachers are not aware of the hidden curriculum, so we wanted to talk to a teacher who, after learning about this concept, noticed it on their own schooling environment or not.
After reading through the article, Social Class and the Hidden Curriculum of Work by Jean Anion, what are your thoughts?
Well, it was very eye-opening. I was kind of surprised to learn that entire schools function differently based on the socioeconomic status of the students. At first, when I heard the concept, I thought that there was no way that happened, that especially in elementary school, that maybe all kids have a very similar experience based on the standards and the curriculum, and didn't realize that there would be such a specific difference in the style of teaching.
Do you see this in your school and with your teachers?
I didn't think that I would until I read through the article, and I teach in a high poverty school in rural Kansas, and I, before reading the article, would have said no, that we do creative projects and that we, especially in math, do concept building types of activities. But then after reading the article, I started thinking teacher by teacher, and I think certain people teach in one style and other people teach in another, and it would be pretty easy for the whole school to be considered teaching to children of poverty in a way that's very rote and following specific directions rather than getting right answers or being creative.
And what do you think the effects of the hidden curriculum are?
Well, I think that kids that are taught only to follow directions and teachers' directions don't learn to think for themselves, and they don't feel like their thoughts and opinions matter, because that's not what's coveted or prized. It's that you follow the steps exactly the way that the teacher followed them. I think if you have a school that's more focused on always getting the right answer, again, you don't learn to think for yourself. You're more interested in finding out what experts have, what articles or news stories have to tell you, but not your own thoughts. And then in reading about the professional schools where the creative process was valued, and especially like in the area of science experiments.
Do you think that the effects of the hidden curriculum are harmful?
I think they definitely could be, because when you think about how low-income schools really covet kids following directions, there's no emphasis on them thinking for themselves or being creative and coming up with their own ideas, and so that really squelches any desire to think for yourself. Thinking mathematically, if kids only learn how to follow a set of directions rotely, you're really limiting what kinds of higher level math that they're ever going to be able to do, because they haven't developed internal number sense and really how numbers work. I even think some of the effects of what they talked about with the middle class schools could be harmful, where it was all about finding the right answer and searching the text for the right answer, and not about creating thought, putting connections together. Kids in the lower income and the middle class schools really weren't encouraged to disagree with the text or to disagree with the ideas that were brought forth in their class, whereas kids in the professional elite schools, they were taught how to disagree and encouraged to disagree and tell why, and that's a very valuable skill that the other kids aren't exposed to.
So what, as an educator, can you do?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing we can do is be aware that this is happening, and be aware of what instances in our day of teaching can we change and maybe bring more creativity in. I think it's really, like when I think about my school, I see in my role as an instructional coach, I got to spend a lot of time with different teachers throughout the school, and I see different teachers fitting into these kind of these three categories, not really because our school fits any one of these molds or characteristics, but I think certain teachers offer more creative experiences, more writing, more discussion, and certain teachers rely very heavily on worksheets. So I think the thing that we can do as educators is experience other ways of teaching. So if I'm very reliant on teaching rote skills, then I need to learn how to teach math for true understanding, not just can I get the right answer. If I'm very oriented towards the middle class and find the answer, check it again, look here, then I need to bring in more conversation and discourse, and allowing my kids to have an opinion and be articulate with their opinion, encouraging them and teaching them how to disagree with one another, because a lot of kids don't know how an okay way to disagree with their teacher or their classmates. They don't know what that could look like. So I think it's all about teacher training.
Although this article does not directly talk about the hidden curriculum, it does discuss white privilege and the invisible knapsack, which is a similar concept. As the hidden curriculum is something that is not discussed but is evident in schools everywhere, so is white privilege. Peggy McIntosh writes in her article, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, that in order to redesign social systems, we need to first acknowledge their colossal unseen dimensions. The silences and denials surrounding privilege are the key political tool here. They keep the thinking about equality or equity incomplete, protecting unearned advantage and conferred dominance by making these taboo subjects. In the same way, the hidden curriculum is something that is not frequently talked about, leaving it up to us as future educators to advocate for a change for kids. As discussed, the hidden curriculum mainly deals with the teacher-student relationship. The teacher constructs the curriculum based on what he or she assumes will benefit the student's future. With that being said, teachers consciously or subconsciously may be teaching in a way to target the stereotype of a particular social class. For example, in a income school, teachers may be prepping the students for high school and then college, but at a low income school, teachers might just be focusing on students' purposes in school, not to pass a particular class, with no necessarily push towards the future. However, what we have not covered is the parent-teacher-student relationships. It is easy to assume that the parents of the students who attend lower income or working class schools are not as involved in the child's academics. It is also easily assumed that the students of parents who work a white-collar job are stricter and expect more out of their children and attain those results by staying involved in their students' academics. While part of that has some truth to it, LaRue tackles the assumptions in her article by exploring two different schools with different socioeconomic statuses. As it turns out, both groups of parents value their children's education, but each group had a different meaning of what a proper education was. Simply put, according to LaRue, the parents of the children in the lower socioeconomic status were more involved in ensuring that their students had a good education by reading with them at home and working on their academics outside of the classroom, whereas parents of the students in a higher socioeconomic status brought their results, so to say, by providing their children with the tools that they need to succeed. They managed to adopt a pattern of separation between home and school, while their counterparts at a lower income school adopted one of interconnectedness. We had explored the hidden curriculum in two schools of different socioeconomic statuses. Sometimes that hidden agenda is prescribed by the teachers, other times it is a direct result of what they witnessed from their parents.
Interview 2. Jeremy Fate. Background on person. Jeremy has been an educator for the last 17 years. He has worked in many schools, from rural SES urban schools to higher SES suburban schools. Jeremy has also been a director of traditional and non-traditional educational instruction for the last 12 years. Why this person was chosen to be interviewed? We chose Jeremy because of his experience in several different SES schools and felt that his experience would be relevant to this topic.
All right. First question. Before this, have you ever heard of the hidden curriculum?
It's something we discussed. We've discussed at conferences and workshops about in curriculum development. So we talk about it every year at training with our staff. Not in depth, but it's something that we've talked about a little bit. So.
Okay. Very good. Very good. What do you think about it, the hidden curriculum?
I think it's a very prominent thing. It depends on where you're at. I've worked in cities, and I've worked in all over the place. And when I worked in a lot of the urban communities, it's something teachers unintentionally do just because of the demographic of who they're working with.
Right.
Working with low-income, impoverished families, parents try to gear their education toward what the kids are most likely to do rather than what they may have full capabilities to do. So I do think it is an issue that it appears in different settings.
Yeah. Do you think it actually exists, the hidden curriculum?
I do. Again, I don't think it's intentional all the time, but I do think it's something that teachers and educators have to be cognizant of to not limit their classrooms based on personal biases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you think hidden curriculum exists in the Hilltop classrooms, whether it's intentional or not?
I'd like to say no. I mean, I hope not. The nice part about Hilltop is because we have such a diverse group of children here from all walks of life. It'd be the way we train our teachers and the way we implement our curriculum. I would hope that the teachers are being more open and honest in the way we assess our teachers on a regular basis. We do a lot of evaluations of the classroom and the curriculum to prevent those types of things from happening. Can I say 100% it doesn't unintentionally? No. But the way we train and evaluate and assess our teachers, the hope is that that doesn't actually occur. So.
Yeah. All right. What do you think? What do you think can be done to change the hidden curriculum phenomenon?
I think better training goes a long way, and somebody who graduated with an ed degree and worked in different environments, I think you have to, as leadership in a building, regardless if it's non-traditional or traditional classrooms, has to be more active in training the teachers about don't let personal biases impact their classroom. And so is it preventable? Yes, but can you take away people's internal? I don't know. I don't know if you can do it 100%.
Right.
In our last article, Delpit says, and finally, we must learn to be vulnerable enough to allow our world to turn upside down in order to allow the realities of others to etch themselves into our consciousness. This can only be done, however, by understanding one's own power, even if that power stems merely from being in the majority, by being unafraid to raise questions about discrimination and voicelessness. This article is called The Silenced Dialogue, which seems to be a common theme. The hidden curriculum is also something that is silenced, which means it will only be brought up in conversation if we are the ones who step up and talk about it, whether it's positively or negatively.